Yo, Lee. I think we got another one.
Come on.
Sing it.
Thought you should know that I will never ever go away.
So you'll never have to worry.
As long as I care for the sparrows in the sky.
You'll never have to worry.
Though it may seem today that I'm so far away from you, you never have to fall, 'cause I'm right here before you call my name. And I'll come running to heal you, feel you, take you by the hand, and I'll show you the way to where I am. All you should know that I will never ever go away.
You'll never have to worry.
As long as I care for the sparrows in the sky.
Never have to worry.
Forget your yesterday, for when this night to brand new day gives way. Your life, your breath renewed, a ray of sun reminds you it's okay. You'll never be alone if you feel me, hear me, take me into your heart, and we'll never ever have to part. Thought you should know that I would never ever go away.
Never have to worry.
As long as I care for the sparrows in the sky.
Never have to worry. Never have to worry about a thing. Don't have to worry. You will never have to worry about a thing. Don't have to worry about a thing.
Thought you should know that I would never ever go.
So you'll never have to worry.
As long as I care for the sparrows in the sky. Oh yeah. Don't worry. Said I never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread.
So you'll never have to worry.
Consider the lilies, how they grow. Whatever you need, your Father knows. Oh, come on, let me say.
Oh, you'll never. Don't you know you never have to worry? I will always be there. Oh yeah, said you will never, you will never have to worry. You will never have to worry. Oh, yes.
If you only knew what I do for you, just be me, nothing that we couldn't do. If you only do what I asked you to, I would make your dreams come true. If you only knew. For so long I've been waiting to spend some time with you. You don't know, you cannot imagine the things that we could do. You can't even understand. If you would only let me in, I would do something special just for you. Only for you. true. If you only knew. Why don't you? Can we go somewhere just me and you? Just the two. Don't delay. It's your day. Would it be okay? Just let me know. Let me know. Let me know. Different places that you've never been. Answer all of the questions you never asked. Oh, you never asked. If you would only take my hand. No more sorrow, no more pain. Never ever hurt again. I'll give you shelter from the rain. All I really want to say is I love you. Let me take you in my arms and just fly away. Ooh, never gonna let you go, baby. Don't wake us tomorrow may never come. Just be me and you, nothing that we couldn't do. If you only do, I asked you to. I would make our dreams come true. If you only do. Just between you and me, this is nice. There's no tricks. Ooh, this love is just between you and me. This is not. Ooh, there's no tricks. This love is. Just what do I have to do to let you know? Should I make your flowers grow? Should I make it rain or snow? Yeah. So many things I've done just for you. Forest green and ocean blue. Just to show my love is true. Just between you and me. This is nice. There's no tricks. This love is so real. Just between. This is nice. There's no tricks. This love is so real. Yeah. Don't you know I taught the birds to fly? Hung the stars up in the sky. Can you guess the reason why? Can you take more than a passing glance? Nothing is by happenstance, yet you think it's just by chance. Just between you and me. This is not no tricks. This love is so real. Between you and me. This is not. There's no tricks. This love is so real. Ocean deep, real wide, valley low and mountain high.
Babe, come on.
I don't understand. I don't know.
What is happening?
I cannot tell you. It makes no sense.
Come on, John.
It wasn't me.
It was you.
No, it wasn't. Well, everybody saw it and heard it now. Let's see if the next scene works. Let's see.
Why?
All right, let's see. Okay.
I don't understand.
I don't get it either. It doesn't make sense to me.
Why, babe? What did you touch?
I didn't do anything. I did nothing. What's up, y'all?
Hey, everybody.
Listen, this wouldn't be Just John and April live if something did not go a little bit wrong. You know what I'm saying? Now, I will tell you this.
No, I don't like that.
I don't think I touched anything,
No,
but I
you
will
touched
say this, that I believe there was an update recently, and I think the update might have messed with something. So it wasn't me.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you tonight. Glad that you are here. Thank you for coming and welcome to Ask John and April Live. We're excited to be here tonight, as we always are. And we have some guests with us this evening that are going to add to our conversation. And we think it's going to be a good one. So,
Yes.
hey, Kim.
Hey,
good to see you.
Kim.
What's up,
What's
Madeline?
up, Madeline?
Glad you guys are here tonight. You know, I put Saba.
Sobs.
She got her eyes wide open, ready to go. So, can you double check for me, babe, and just see if we're actually on YouTube? Because
Oh, YouTube.
yes, YouTube. Because everybody so far that's commenting is on Facebook. Updates don't cause confusion, Michael Shelton said. That's not true, Shelton. You don't
No,
know. You know what I'm
updates
saying?
do jack you up.
What's
Listen.
up? What's up, O'Brien? Good to see
Hey,
you.
O'Brien.
Updates be jacking you up sometimes,
They
man.
do.
You know what I'm saying? You never
They
know.
do
Especially
be.
with Ecan. It's like Ecan be changing stuff. And what'll happen is, whatever your process was, they'll change something else. So you got to go in and check every single thing. Okay, O'Brien says he's watching on YouTube right now.
Okay, good, because I couldn't get that up fast enough.
Even though he's commenting on Facebook, he is watching also on YouTube.
Good. What about?
Thank you for letting us know.
Okay.
Valerie is too. Hey, Valerie. Good to
Marissa.
see you. Marissa, glad you are here tonight. Yeah, hey, Kim. Good to see you too.
Hey, girl, I can't believe you ain't in the bed.
So thank you, Chimes, always for letting us know when something is happening. And O'Brien, you chimed in just in
Yes.
time to let us know our stuff is actually working. I did something today where I scheduled this and then took it down and rescheduled it, and I wasn't sure if it put it up right, but apparently it did. So
Y'all about to get John in tutorial mode. Don't be asking no questions, okay? No questions about technology.
Wanda's here too. What's up,
Hey,
fam?
Wanda.
Good to see you. Glad you are here
Hey.
tonight.
Yes.
So there's a couple of things that are going on in the world right now, and one of them has been stealing the headlines, and that's what we're really going to be talking about tonight. But before we get into that, we want to jump right in,
I'm
really.
excited. We do want to jump
Yes,
right in.
because we don't want to waste a lot of time, because we want to make sure we have two different guests tonight, both of whom have expertise in things that touch this situation that's going
topic.
on. This
Yes.
topic,
Yes,
exactly.
yes, yes.
I just want to make sure that we hear from both of them. Before we do, we want to have a word from our sponsor. This is actually the last time
Last time, y'all.
that we're going to hear from them for a while, because the tournament is coming up this upcoming weekend. So the only other time we have between now and then is our podcast on Friday to
yeah,
talk about them
so
one
when
more
does
time.
it start, babe?
It starts on Sunday, October the 3rd, and it goes through Wednesday, October the 6th. It's the Brothers and Sisters Golf Tournament. It's happening in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I don't know if you've already signed up, but if you haven't, they're still taking signups, and you can still use our code CHIMES10 to get 10% off if you would like to go. The thing about it is, Sunday has a practice round. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday all have tournament rounds. There's prizes. There are several courses on there. I think there's 4 courses. You might be playing one of each during that time that you're there. And then there's other courses that are in Myrtle Beach that you can enjoy while you're there. So it should be a wonderful time. It's a great part of the country. The
Yes.
weather has been great lately.
At a resort.
Yeah, this is the time. This is the time to actually do it. So
It is.
anyway, hope you guys enjoy this, and thank you to the brothers for sponsoring us for a few months now.
Yes.
And we hope and wish for a great, great tournament. Okay. Marissa wants to know who's going to win. I don't know.
Listen, you don't know?
I'm not sure who's going to win. You know what I'm saying?
You're not talking junk
I
tonight.
usually know. But anyway,
not talking junk
I'm not talking
tonight,
junk
Marissa.
tonight. That's true. Okay, so we have two guests. We want to introduce them to you right now.
Well, don't you want to talk about what our topic's going to be?
Yes, I do, actually.
Did you forget about that?
No, I didn't. I
Okay.
didn't.
I just didn't know.
So, as you know, earlier this week, if you've been watching the news at all, R. Kelly was found guilty. What is it?
Sorry. Brian is hilarious.
Are we still not listening to R. Kelly? What about the other artists that he sang the hook on?
I haven't stepped in love about 2 to 3 years.
Talking about stepping in the name of love.
Right. Can I slide into love?
Is that considered safe? That's a good question. In fact, we might talk a little bit. It's not one of the questions that we had planned, but we might talk a little bit about cancel culture and the fact
That's true.
that R. Kelly has been canceled for about 5 years now, and there may be other people that maybe we should cancel that aren't canceled, and the question is why.
But do you think you should be canceling people? Do you like the idea of canceling people altogether?
I am in support of canceling people sometimes. I think there are certain situations. Let's put it this way. I don't love cancel culture, but I definitely think that there are times when it is legitimate to cancel somebody.
You need to be canceled at least for a little bit, or at least for some time until you get yourself together. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
You think people should be
Courtney
canceled
says,
for
"Happy
good?
Hump Day, fam." What's up, Courtney?
What up, Court?
I do think there's some circumstances under which a person should be canceled for good once you find out some things. But anyway,
Wow.
that's not really what tonight's
I'm
subject
surprised
is.
you said that.
I don't know why you are.
Hey, Raquel.
So anyway,
All right,
we've got two people with us tonight that are going to help us to discuss this topic. And I want to bring them.
Professionals.
Yes, I want to bring them on the screen right now. One you will see immediately. The other one I got to put in the screen. So let me change your name, D.
Quick. See, he erased the whole thing and typed instead of just...
See, D Knight. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm gonna put her in. So, babe, why don't you introduce Nicole to us while
Yes.
I'm putting D into the screen?
Yes, so can you scroll down here for me, though?
Yes.
First?
You want to
All right,
scroll
so,
up? You mean?
yes. So this is Nicole Fryson. She is, she's an attorney, and she works for TransPerfect Legal Solutions. And Nicole Fryson is a wonderful person. I love her dearly. She's my
Why?
sister. Okay? Sister by another mister, but she is my sister. And an excellent attorney. I'm so proud of her. She has really gone far in her career and is amazing at her job. So welcome, Nicole. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
She's our legal correspondent.
She is our
on
legal
the-
correspondent, yes.
on the episode tonight.
Yes. And then we have Dr. D. Knight, who we love so much. I love your personality so much.
We have worked with
Yay,
you
go
a
ahead.
few times over the years
Yes.
with
Okay.
marriage and family stuff or whatever. We've done some stuff together. That's been good, I think. I think you enjoyed it.
Yes.
Hopefully. We did.
Hopefully you did. And
Yes,
Dr.
absolutely.
D. Knight is a clinical psychologist, and she's going to really help us to look at the mental health side of this. So,
So our mental health correspondent for this
yes,
show.
and we are so glad that you joined us tonight. And we love you and your family as well, and we're so glad that you are here. So let's get to the nitty gritty right now.
So, first of all, this question was not on the paper at all. I have to do this just to. I just want to know. Just be honest. Did either of you listen to R. Kelly growing up?
Yes, absolutely.
Me too.
What? Bump and grind? Y'all was talking about step in the name of love. What are you talking about? Bump and grind.
Exactly.
Mine was remixed to Ignition, hot and fresh out the kitchen. You
Okay.
know,
Okay.
like, you know, we were in law school, I guess that was. But you talked about cancel culture. I know this is not one of the questions.
No, I wanted to go down
Yes,
there.
let's
I wanted
go.
to say because
Right.
what do you do in a situation like this when do you cancel people? Have you canceled R. Kelly? How long ago did it happen? You know, whatever.
I stopped listening. My sisters will tell you though, they get upset with me because they're like, "Who are we boycotting now?" Because I'm quick to be like, "No, we're not doing this. I'm not shopping at H&M. I'm not doing that. I'm not listening to R. Kelly. I'm just not doing it because I feel like I work hard for my money and I shouldn't support things that do not align with my values." And so I think that cancel culture has been used as a weapon against those of us that decide we don't want to put our money in those places, as opposed, you know,
wow.
they've made it sound like a bad thing, as opposed to being a choice that we're making with where I'm gonna spend my hard-earned money and who I'm gonna support and what I'm gonna put my support behind.
Well said. Well, what about you, D? Same thing?
Yeah, what am I going to finance? So yes, where am I going to spend my money? But what am I going to finance? And from a very serious perspective, he was convicted of racketeering. And I'm sure that Nicole is going to get into that for us. But that means that the money we send him was financing this criminal enterprise that he was doing, right? And so that's what we have to think about when we think about, do we have to cancel their music? Okay, do you want to finance sex trafficking? That's the question you should be asking yourself.
And so
Very true, very true.
that's a real question. We're gonna get into that in a second. Into these real questions.
And Bryant, we're going to talk about that. So
Bryant said, "Does Bill Cosby and the Cosby Show in a different world get canceled too? Might lose some people, but Cosby Show was cultural and helped push HBCUs." So how far do we go with the cancel culture thing?
I'm gonna just say this: I will never cancel the Cosby Show. Bam! I will not be canceling the Cosby Show or a different world.
Now the thing is though.
Because it's more than him. He cannot take.
Is it possible to cancel Bill Cosby and not cancel
Felicia
the Cosby
Rashad
Show?
and what's her name and Theo and all them? I mean, I don't know.
As well.
I don't know.
What'd you just say?
On my list.
Why is Felicia Rashad on your list? What'd she do?
You didn't see what she said? She tweeted out that justice was served when he got acquitted. And now, I'll talk about that in a minute too. But like, she stuck her foot in her mouth. Just don't say anything. If you support him,
I agree.
just say nothing.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
the
big.
child
He's talking about, I got
in.
my DVD box set unwrapped in the player
but
now.
the only thing. So here's the thing, and
my goodness.
and I guess people feel like they want to be real and they don't want to fake about the things that they're doing. For one, your DVD box is already paid for, right? So if you're in the privacy of your own home watching something that you've already paid for, that is totally different than supporting something that is on a streaming service and subscribing to something, and then saying to survivors, I understand that he did this, but I'm still gonna watch this stuff. Like, that's just like, it's kind of like spitting in the face of survivors sometimes. And so oftentimes that will create an environment where people don't feel safe to share about what their experiences are, because they see that the person who has abused them, who has been abusive, is being celebrated.
Well, there's a lot of stuff we should not watch then.
Probably.
Yes.
I mean, if we want to go down that list,
Right, you're right.
that's a lot of stuff that we should not be watching. Even the news.
But you know
I'm
what? Something that Dr. Yaba Blaze said, which I thought was really important. She said, if you really want justice, or this is the effect of what she said, if you really want justice, you're going to have to give up some things. So what are you willing to give up for the cause that you are saying that you're standing for, right?
Yeah.
What are you willing to give up? We won't get there with all of the things that we desire in our hands. We won't.
Wow.
Very true. Very true.
Okay, so let's get some of these questions. I want to ask you a question, Nicole, from the legal aspect of what's going on. R. Kelly was convicted of 9 federal counts on Monday, including racketeering, sex crimes, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, human trafficking. A lot of those terms we've heard before, and we may understand. Some of them we may not quite understand. Can you help our audience to understand a little bit better what the charges actually were, and what kind of time is associated with these things? Like, how much time could he be looking at as a result of this?
So I'll start with the time. I'll go through each of them. Some of them are a little more self-explanatory than others. But the time, I think a lot of people have seen the headlines that he's looking at life, right? So he's 54. And a lot of these have, because they're federal crimes, they have suggested their guidelines. I think we've all heard about the federal guidelines for sentencing. And there are suggested minimums and maximums. And with everything that he's got, he's looking at life, because some of them are like for bribery. There's a fine that goes with it, but then there's also imprisonment for up to 15 years. The sexual exploitation of a child, there's a maximum of 30 years.
Wow.
You look at racketeering, they look at 20 years for that. And you add all of that up, and at 54, 30, 15, 20, 50, we're looking at 65 years at 54. So I think the one thing that people have a question about is the racketeering. What is racketeering? You usually hear it when you're talking about mob bosses. They talk about
That's what we always know it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a criminal enterprise, right? And so, as I was looking at information for tonight, I saw where his attorney in his Illinois case was surprised that he was convicted on the racketeering charge because he's not a mob boss. Well, the argument was that, he had all these people doing all of these things and he was directing them to do it. And so it was a criminal enterprise. He didn't act alone. You heard about, like, with Aaliyah, when he got married, he had people working for him to get the marriage certificate and to falsify her date of birth and all of that stuff. And so it was just consistent for years and years. He didn't act alone. He had a slew of people, even people that testified saying what they had done. So that's why they got him on the racketeering or the RICO Act for this criminal enterprise, for organized crime.
Wow. So that kind of leads me to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be jumping around.
Yeah, that's fine.
So Dr. Knight, I really want to know from you, Nicole is talking about these people who were involved. They knew what R. Kelly was doing. They helped him in what he was doing. So how do you get people to, how are people, like, just in their thinking to be able to go along with something like this, to be able to, they're adults, right? These are adults, but able to go along with him.
And a lot of the victims seem like they were underage or
exactly,
teenagers.
Knowing that
like
they're children, they're teenagers, young children. I mean, really young teenagers. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, what is in the mind of an adult that would participate in that?
Yeah, well, a few things. First of all, abuse that is ongoing like this always requires some level of collusion. That means there are some people that are turning a blind eye. You don't abuse people for 20, 30 years without other people somehow turning a blind eye, seeing something happening and rationalizing it in their head as to what it is, right? That it just doesn't happen. There are people that they have to depend on us not looking at abusers and scrutinizing the people who are being abused. Quite often, what did those girls get called? Fast, right? She being fast, a fast-tailed girl, right? And so they rationalize it quite often in their minds. We have this thing called cognitive dissonance. And that means that there's like a little difference between what I'm doing and what I really believe, right? I might really believe that children should be kept safe, but I'm doing this thing for this person that says, so I have to rationalize it in my mind. I have to say to myself, you know what? She's 15. She knows what she's doing. She knows what she wants. Her parents know when they send her over there what's happening. She's spending the night with the producer. Come on, you know what's happening. Yeah, we all know what's happening and nobody's doing anything about it. And quite often when there's celebrity status, people are allowed to do things like that, right? Even when it's wrong, even when it is the wrong thing. You think Uriah got sent to the battle line by himself? No, somebody gave him those orders, right?
That's true.
People around King David knew that he was after Uriah's wife. Somebody brought Bathsheba to him. You think he went over there by himself? No. And so oftentimes abuse requires other people and their perspectives to kind of, they change their mind about things instead of changing their behaviors. And they, unfortunately, are colluding with this whole situation.
And sometimes you feel like the celebrity status factors into it. It's like maybe I'll get something out of this person. Maybe there's money involved. Maybe this could launch my daughter's career, whatever. I'm willing to accept a few things in order to get there.
And we talked about that, how, you hear about athletes moving in with their coaches. You hear about, musicians moving in with their producers, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, how is that? They're strangers to you, basically. And you give your children over to these people to be raised, and sometimes it turns out great. And other times it doesn't. So it's just surprising that parents would be willing to do that.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a culture surrounding it, right? That normalizes it to some degree, even if it's something that seems unsafe to the rest of us, right? I'm not a celebrity. I'm not in music, so I don't know any producers, right? And so I don't even have those opportunities. So me sitting on the outside, it's like, that is just so odd. Why would I even send my child to go sleep in Michael Jackson's house? Like, what are y'all talking about? Why would my child over with R. Kelly, right? Like, it doesn't even sound like it should be a thing. But when you think about it, like when you listen to those Olympic gymnasts, they said no, like this was the norm. It was the norm that you send your child off to the Olympic Village. You sign a paper that you do not come and visit them for 2 weeks, right? So this was the norm. So sometimes it's the culture that needs to shift. We need to recognize there is something unsafe about sending 15-year-old girls and 14-year-old girls and 13-year-old girls off with this male producer by themselves, where they can't be observed, where nobody can see what's going on in those situations and even know if they're being groomed. So we need to change something about the culture.
I agree.
Definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
Okay, so Nicole, we heard that it was reported, I think there were 11 different people that came out to testify against R. Kelly in this case. And I'm assuming that has an influence on the jury. I really don't know, but I'm assuming that there's going to be
just
something.
By sheer number.
Just the sheer number of people that are coming forward saying the same thing. How does something like that impact when the... I don't know if you've ever been part of a jury. I mean, I've only done jury duty like once. But when you see when something like that is happening in a court case, does that preponderance of evidence oftentimes have an impact on the jury in the way that they see things?
So it can. You'll see other cases where there may be a lot of witnesses, but the evidence is more circumstantial. Here, it was not circumstantial. Like, you had smoking guns. I talked about it before. Aaliyah's, the marriage license. You can look at her birth certificate, the date that they were married, and her date of birth, and it's easy to do the math there. So
Yeah.
I think it's the number of people that testified. It was the horrific nature of the crimes. The fact that they're videotapes. Like, he taped this stuff. So there's so much evidence that it's hard to. And I know we saw back in Chicago in 2008 where they did acquit, and that was for child pornography. These were different crimes. I think the prosecutors in this case, not I think, it's clear based on the conviction that they, did more due diligence. They got their evidence. They prepared their witnesses. I think it's also not lost on juries. Like, you're supposed to only take a look at the evidence in the courtroom, right? Like, that's what you're supposed to base your decision on. But let's be real. Like, the documentary that came out, that
Right.
6-part documentary.
They watched that.
Yeah.
Most people saw it.
Yeah.
And
Now,
so,
would a jury be instructed by a judge
To
not
not
to
watch
watch
that?
that?
Yeah.
But then, of course, they're free to do it anyway. Is that how that works? Or they just don't say anything?
well, so that happened before the jury was even selected. It happened before he was charged with these crimes. That's part of the onus behind
Good point.
why all of this came back up, because he had been free as a bird for all these years. Like, nobody was saying anything. It started, I was looking like Mute R. Kelly is kind of what started all of this again. And the 6-part documentary. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. We need to take a look. Maybe in Chicago, which Chicago was a state crime. Like, the state was prosecuting him there. Here, these were federal crimes. And so there are additional resources to federal law enforcement, to the prosecutors and that kind of thing. So I think that may have had a part to play in it as well. But just the sheer number of witnesses, all of the additional evidence, the videotapes, this was just not circumstantial. And I know this is part of what we'll talk about later, but there was just too much here. Too much evidence for people to ignore what was going
Couldn't
on.
ignore it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we were talking about, we talked about the 11 victims that came forward. So, Dr. Knight, what do you think about, we've heard that sex abuse victims often will not come forward for a number of reasons. So if this is, first of all, is that true? Okay, that's number one. And then can we safely assume that there were more victims because of that, because they may not come forward for whatever reason? Do you feel like there may have been more than 11 because of that, if that is actually true?
Is that a thing?
Yeah, is that an actual thing?
Yeah, it's almost impossible that would be the extent of his of the people that he victimized across that time, right? I don't even want to say victims. I don't know what they call themselves, but as far as his actions, it would be impossible, right? That they got every single person to come forward, especially with the documentary. I mean, you had more than 11 people that were consulted about that too. There were several people that did not want to come on camera because look at what it took. Listen to all the evidence that she just said. They have videotapes, and they have testimony, and they have decades, they have generations. One lady said, from that area in Chicago that she grew up in, where R. Kelly was, she said, every single woman I know has an R. Kelly story. Every single one. We're talking about mothers who have a testimony about R. Kelly, and their daughters have a story about R. Kelly. We're talking about generations that were impacted. Absolutely, there's going to be some people who aren't coming forward.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
First of all, I've
Oh, my
never heard that
goodness.
before.
Me either.
I had never heard that many people. So he clearly had an impact in that area. It was obviously very famous. Came from probably humble beginnings. Everybody already knew him. He was talented. And once he had this meteoric rise, I'm sure that attracted people to him and all of that.
Oh yeah, you know it.
So that had a lot of impact. That is crazy, man.
Yeah. So Nicole, when we're talking about the sentencing, because I think it's not scheduled to like May 4th. So that's a while from now.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, like first of all, why is it so long?
What's that? Yeah, why would it take so long?
Why does it take so long? I always wondered why it took so long. I never looked it up to find out why.
Right.
And then, what does he do in the meantime? Is he in jail? Is he able to just roam about? Is he home?
So R. Kelly is not able to roam about because like when he was charged in Chicago before the New York charges, no bond. So he was in jail because he's a flight risk. Like he's got means. And so if he's gone, he's out of here. You can't get him back. So he's a flight risk. As to why it's so long, there's several different theories as to why it's taking so long. COVID, the judge's schedule. But there are also other cases pending right now. Like he's got the federal charges in Chicago, in Illinois. He also has state charges in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. Ooh. And so there are other trials. Yeah, there are other trials. He has co-defendants in the Illinois case, and they want to go to trial soon. you're entitled to, you have a constitutional right to a speedy trial. And so for them to have to wait, that's one of the reasons that they think that they've pushed back the sentencing in New York, so he can go handle his business in these other jurisdictions where he's got these cases against him. But no, he's not just able to, he's a flight risk, a serious flight risk. And so he's locked up.
Wow.
That's crazy, man.
That is very crazy. I had no idea. It's
So-
way bigger than we knew it was big, but this is way bigger than, and I will just say that just thinking of, we were talking about at the beginning about cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. I actually was done with R. Kelly, even though I did listen to some of his stuff when he did that whole what was
The
it?
hip-hopper
The
thing?
hip-hopper thing. That's when I came back, right? But when he did that, I Believe I Can Fly. Mm-hmm. I don't know if y'all know about that subliminal message he put in there, and you can hear it, and I can't say it on the show, but it's in there. Anyway,
so I want to ask Dee some stuff
So he
about
was-
helping us to get a little bit into the mind of. Obviously, you can't get into
yes,
the
and
mind
this
of,
is
but
and I'm glad. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but
Right.
I mentioned that because he put that in there where it was a sexual act that he put within that song,
Yeah.
and you heard it clearly if you knew where it was, right? So I was done with him then because it was like, why would you put that in there? Something's wrong with you. Something is wrong with you because you felt like you had to put that there for what reason, and your song had nothing to do with that. It was supposed to be encouraging, a motivational song. So go ahead, because you're going into...
He put a sexual sort of subliminal message into
Exactly.
the thing. It wasn't subliminal. It was actually, wasn't it backmasked?
It was
that
backmasked,
you play
exactly.
it backwards and it says something?
No, it wasn't back. No.
Oh.
It was just a silent background.
Like you hear him whispering.
Where he said it. He whispered it.
Okay. Anyway, so here's my question, Dee. I want to know more about the mind of a sex abuse victim. How might a person respond to being victimized and then not getting any justice? Like seeing that their abuser is able to keep living and thrive and all of that, and maybe people come out against them or something, and nothing's really happening. What kind of toll would that take on? I'm sure it would take a tremendous toll on somebody's psyche. Does that kind of thing make victims more? And maybe I shouldn't use that word. Earlier, I heard you say maybe they don't
Whatever
refer
they
to
wanna
themselves
be-
as victims.
right.
Maybe that's not even the right term to use.
Right.
But how would what would that do to someone in a situation like that? What kinds of things do we see in cases like that?
Yes, and so I do try to say people who have experienced sexual abuse, just so that,
like that.
people have the right to say what, call themselves whatever they want to call themselves, whether
Right.
they call themselves victims, whether they call themselves survivors. Quite honestly, I think most people who have experienced sexual abuse vacillate between the two of those things. Nobody is a full-time survivor and nobody is a full-time victim. And so it takes more words, but it gives people a little more justice with the language that we use.
I agree.
I agree.
Yes, I do say people who have been sexual abused or experienced sexual abuse. When the person who has done wrong does not have any punishment or does not have any kind of recourse for their actions, it makes it less likely that people will come forward, right? Especially again, if you see the person who has done you this harm being celebrated, it makes it much more likely that you will blame yourself. We have this thing called rape culture, just the idea that we blame victims and people who have been victimized, right? We blame the individual who has received abuse as opposed to putting the onus on the person who has caused the damage, the person who is actually doing the abusing. And we do it oftentimes even with our language, right? Because we will sit here and say, well, what do we say? We say that we didn't see it happen. You weren't there. So how would you know? There were people outside of the courtroom after R. Kelly was convicted, people outside of the courtroom saying free R. Kelly and serve justice for R. Kelly. And this is unfair. And it's just like, when you see people being celebrated for the wrong that they do, and this is biblical as well. I mean, in Ecclesiastes, it says when the punishment for a crime is not swiftly carried out, the people think it in their hearts that it's okay to do wrong.
That's right.
And so that is very
Wow.
clear. if we are not putting the punishment forth for wrong behaviors, we are sending the message that it is okay to do this wrong thing. And if it's okay to do this wrong thing, what are we telling the people who have survived this wrong thing? We're telling them that, and honestly, as human beings, we look for who to blame. When something bad happens, I would rather blame myself than have nobody to blame. Because that way, at least I can say, okay, I need to make sure I stay out of this situation the next time, right? When the reality is we need to put the onus on the person who is doing the abusing. It's very important.
So just a little piggyback off that, I want to ask you a follow-up question. And I'm only asking this because of my profession. What does it do then when we in the church are unwilling to be swift and strong against popular people who have victimized others?
Wow.
I know the answer, but I just want to ask you.
Yes.
Well, we're telling people that position is more important than people. We're telling them that somebody's celebrity is more important than their soul. We really are. We're telling them it's more important that we, and oftentimes churches, and I don't know if you've kept up with what's going on in the SBC, right? Like oftentimes churches will say, well, we don't want to bring any dishonor to the church, the organization, right? The structure. When the reality is the way that we treat those who have been marginalized, those who have been abused, those who have been harmed, right? The way we treat those individuals, that is really what shows whether or not we are a loving church, whether or not we are a loving body, whether or not we are trustworthy.
That's right? According to Scripture.
That's according.
That is absolutely 100% according to
the reality, right?
That too.
The reality. Yeah. The reality is, if you are abusing the people who are already being trampled upon, what safety are you? What sanctuary do you provide?
Exactly.
How are you providing safety, right? How are you showing love? If you are still putting on the downtrodden, you're making them carry the burden of their own abuse. Like, how are we showing love to those individuals?
Wow. So true.
So I know, I'm sorry, I know this was not my... No,
it doesn't matter. Chime in anytime you want.
I meant to say that to you. Chime in anytime. And by the way, Dr. Knight, you got a lot of... Preach, Dr. Knight.
Way to bring in Ecclesiastes into 2021.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Move your toes, folks.
All that. Go ahead, Nicole. You can say anything you want anytime. There are no specific questions for one of you. Sorry.
All right. Well, just, Dee was talking about the downtrodden and victims and the messages that we send. And one thing, it's pretty prevalent and easy to see is that a lot of times this happens and we're not sending the right message to victims of color, to Black women. Like they're just not believed. Like this was not a thing. Like Harvey Weinstein, like that was a thing pretty quickly. I mean, I know he was doing it in Hollywood for a while, but R. Kelly fully went to trial in 2008. And it's not a thing because like Dee was saying, we call, and especially Black girls, they're fast or they were looking for it, or as opposed to the onus being on the person perpetuating it. He was a predator. Right. Like these were children, and children put themselves in situations. We see it all the time. We have to protect our children because we're like, you shouldn't do that. That wasn't a good decision. Their minds have not been developed to make the best decisions. And he took advantage of that. And these young Black children were not listened to because they were already marginalized. They've already been trampled on, and there are no expectations for them. And so it's okay. Whether it's being perpetuated by somebody white, whether it's perpetuated by somebody Black, there just are not expectations for our young Black children. And so this was allowed to go on for so long. And so, like you asked earlier, were there more than 11? Heck yeah, there were way more than 11 people. They just don't want to come forward because their lives, their bodies, they're not valued in any way. And so holding people accountable is important.
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying and that it's clear to our audience. It sounds like what you're saying is someone like Harvey Weinstein, who was involved with women who mostly were not of color, justice was served more quickly in that situation. Is that what you're suggesting? Because we're dealing with Black women. It's like, okay, it's whatever.
That's not what I'm suggesting. That's what I'm saying loud and clear.
There we go.
Wow. Thank you.
Exactly.
I want to make sure it's clear for the audience.
Exactly.
There's an entire body of research on the adultification of Black girls.
Yes, I've read about that. Yes.
Black girls. There's really a good bit of research on that, to where Black girls are seen as more aggressive. They're given more demerits at school. They're seen as older than they actually are. They are seen as knowing what they're doing. And we see it played out in the criminal justice system as well. And so there is an entire body of research on that. We're not just willy-nilly saying, oh, see, y'all don't treat Black women right. No, we're looking at research and telling you Black women are not respected as much in the United States of America, right?
Period.
And so that is often why there are a lot more victims and a lot more people victimized than come forward, because they're not believed when they're told, when they tell, and when they come forward about it. What are they told? You being a fast tail girl, you know that you wanted that. There's just this idea that they are older and that they want things that quite obviously children do not want. I'm sorry, I have a 16-year-old. Our oldest child is 21, so I know what it looks like for a child to be 14 or 15. They ain't ready to be married. They are not. They're not asking for a 30-year-old to come on to them, right? And so we have to recognize that a lot of these people that he victimized were children. We're not talking about women. We're talking about children.
So I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the young ladies who were missing. I don't know the names, but there was a white young lady who was missing, and they were on it, like people out looking for her, trying to figure out what happened. I mean, she's not like a celebrity, okay? And they're out, if I'm correct, I don't believe she is, and they're out searching. And on the news, they were just talking about how they'd had a list of Black young women who had been missing, and not one person had mentioned them on the news. They had gotten no kind of,
no search parties. Nobody's stopping anything. And so that just solidifies what you're saying. Even in that, missing children. And it's just so sad. And Amber was saying here, Nicole, your sister, that one of her former students was a victim to R. Kelly, and her parents tried to bring attention to it for years. Wow.
I remember seeing that in Atlanta because she was in the house.
Wow. That's crazy.
It is. So everybody is wanting me to say what it was that he said on. Did we lose Nicole?
I don't think so. Well, maybe we did.
Yeah, I think we did.
Should probably call back in.
Yes, but so I will say. So this is what he said.
You're gonna tell him what he said?
I'm gonna tell him what he said. I can't say it.
I mean,
I'll just say. So the part when he does his run. That big run, I believe I can fly, and he does it over and over again, right? Yeah. Right at the end of that long run, he says, let's see, how can I say this? Will we get jacked on YouTube?
Probably.
Yeah, so
you probably can't say it.
Yes, thank you, Sheldon. Just read, he put it on there. Sheldon put it in the
just
comments.
Read the comments and you'll see what he said.
I mean, he really said that. Me and my sister used to run that thing over because we could not believe our ears. That was actually there. It was whispered, and it was there. Anyway,
so see if you can text Nicole to tell her to call back in to the same thing, because something happened with her feed. I'm not sure what it was, but anyway. So D, we got another question, and just wanting to know. It turns out that from what we heard, that Bill Cosby. Came out.
Well,
ahead,
I'm sorry. This is related to what you were saying earlier when you said, people were saying, R. Kelly, we want him free, whatever. So this kind of goes along with that. Right.
So Bill Cosby apparently came out and said that R. Kelly got a raw deal. And I'm going to ask Nicole a little bit later on, because we all know that Bill Cosby was convicted and was actually in prison. And then there was some technicality about something that happened in the way that he was arrested that had to do with violating his constitutional rights. And so he was able to get off. And so now he's out. We all know that. And so I want to ask Nicole later on, Bill Cosby was convicted. He's not even doing any time. Something like that may happen with R. Kelly. But I want to know what that kind of thing does to the psyche of a person who has been victimized in a situation like that. To know that you can go all the way through the process, the person can actually get convicted and still in the end maybe not even do any time.
Right.
Having that in the back of your mind
that's got
to be debilitating to someone.
Right.
To know that I had to deal with all this.
And
maybe
now,
I even came out and actually had the courage to testify.
Yes.
And it worked, and yet there's still no time that's being served. What might that do to somebody?
Well, just as much as you might imagine. And I'm actually going to speak to this from a perspective of some things that we might need to put in place, right? And this is why it's so important not to just do background checks. Wonderful if your organization does background checks. That is the bare minimum, that you do not hire people who have sexually abused others in the past, right? That's the bar is on the floor at that point.
You're scraping the bottom of the barrel in that
right,
situation.
Right.
Yeah, at the bottom of the barrel, right? And actually, and I will tell you, there are some organizations that I have heard of that decided not to do a background check because so many people were coming up with these criminal histories.
Oh
And
my
it's
goodness!
like,
Now
They couldn't hire anybody. You're
I
saying?
have to just stop you for a minute, guys. Chimes, you have to share right now. You have to share because people need to hear this great information right now.
Yeah.
This is great stuff.
Right.
So go ahead and just share right now so that everybody can get a little taste of this. All right,
Okay,
go
keep
ahead.
going.
And I'm talking about churches, by the way. I really am. I mean, I'm not going to mince words about that.
Churches that
And
didn't
so,
do background checks because they couldn't hire anybody.
Because so many people were coming up with criminal histories, and so they stopped doing the background check.
Are you kidding
background
me?
check is the bare minimum. Okay, this is required
Wow.
by quote unquote the world. So if we ought to be doing something good, we ought to be doing a better job than that, right? So not only do we do background checks, because there might be some people like Bill Cosby who you go through that whole process and the person still does not get convicted. You have 50 something women who have come forward and said, this person did this to me, this person did this to me, this person did this to me. And the stories are all the same. They still don't get convicted. So background checks are not enough. What do we need to do? We need to have some policies in place that keep children safe, that keep the vulnerable safe, right? Simple things sometimes like, most sexual abuse occurs in one-on-one situations, one adult, one child. So make sure that you have observable situations. One of my children, when they were going to be baptized, the baptismal classes was supposed to be them and the youth pastor in some back room at the church. I said, absolutely not. We've taught our children that is not a safe environment. It has nothing to do with you. And the person raised their eyebrow like as if I thought they might abuse my child. I'm like, you might. How would I know?
Yeah,
You're not going to be alone with my child in some back room at the church. That's all I know.
That's right.
I'm not telling you that. So it's not about the person. It's about the policy. We ought to have some policies in place if we're claiming to love people. We have to have some policies in place that will keep them safe. And we can do that. It's simply a choice of doing it. We just have to
and like you said, those policies are not personal. It's not about the person or anything. It's really about protection. And really, there's something that we need as human beings. We all need accountability. And when I'm in a situation where I feel like I can do anything and get away with it, there's no telling what I might do.
Exactly.
So sometimes I need just the threat.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes just the threat of knowing that somebody's going to know.
Right. It's a problem, right? Zimbardo still talks about that to this day. The guy who did the Stanford prison experiments, power without oversight is disastrous, right? We have people who we are giving power to, and there is no accountability attached to that power. You are giving a recipe for disaster. Does that mean that every single person will take that power and wield it in a wicked way? No, not necessarily, but we have enough research that also tells us that people who are in power, so let's just say celebrity, like R. Kelly, right? They tend to misinterpret regular things, regular interactions. They tend to misinterpret it as more sexualized than it actually was, that the person was actually coming on to them when they weren't, just from a little bit of power. And some of these things are as little bit as, hey, you're in charge of this meeting and you're in charge of distributing the cookies. You give somebody power over a cookie and they have now let it go to their head, and we literally see changes in their brain. Like my doctorate is in neuropsychology, right? So I love looking at brain and behavior changes, right? We literally see changes in their brain that is as if their frontal lobe is cut off. It's as if they don't have the ability to make wise decisions. So when we give people power without accountability, we are asking for an abusive situation to be set up.
Wow. So what we're really saying is power without accountability actually has the ability to corrupt a person. That circumstance in and of itself may bring out something that might not have been there in the first place. You may be creating something just by putting someone in that position.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if it's that it wasn't there in the first place, but it definitely gives fertile ground.
Exacerbates.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So Nicole, when you went out, we were asking the question, Bill Cosby was out there saying that R. Kelly got a raw deal and all that stuff. And of course, we know Bill Cosby was convicted for aggravated indecent assault, and he was sentenced, but his sentence was vacated by the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania in June of 2021, this year, because apparently his constitutional rights were violated. What exactly happened there to make it so that Bill Cosby got off? And the question is there a possibility that
this could happen?
That the same thing might happen with R. Kelly.
Case,
that he got sentenced. I mean, he got convicted, but then won't actually do any real time.
So I'll start with what happened with Cosby and why his sentence was vacated. There was a constitutional violation. So it was self-incrimination. Fifth Amendment protects your right from being compelled to incriminate yourself, right? And so though he admitted, and the way he was convicted, it wasn't just from the testimony, but there was an admission of guilt on his part in a deposition. And they used that to convict him. He didn't give the deposition until they promised him that he wouldn't be convicted. So he self-incriminated himself. There was self-incrimination based on a promise, right? So he may not have ever said that, and the evidence there was circumstantial. Now, I'm not opining on whether or not I think he did it. I did.
You're just telling us the law.
But I'm telling you the law, how he got off, right?
Right.
So that's why it was vacated for procedurally. And that's why we have rules and processes, because we do have to protect people's, their due process rights, right? And so you can't just say you did it, I'm going to arrest you. You've got to read people Miranda rights. Like, there are protections that everybody is allowed, because that could have been one of us. Like, we see it with our Black boys all the time when the cops pull them over and they're not given due process, or when kids are kicked out of school without due process.
Yes.
So there are rules put in place to protect everybody. It can be abused. There are loopholes. It does create loopholes like we see with Cosby. But there was a violation there, and the judge ruled that there clearly was. Now, R. Kelly, I do not think, in my opinion, that it will be the same. One, because of the acts, what happened, how many there were. I'm not saying there weren't as many as with Cosby, but also the age of these women.
Yes.
Like, these were minors.
Yes.
And there were so many different minors. And I talked before about circumstantial evidence, and that's not what we're looking at here. Cosby's was circumstantial. There wasn't a smoking gun. The women were saying, he gave us a pill, I didn't. Or I did, or I told them it was just a drink, it was consensual. It was a he said, she said. Not that it makes it better, because I know that happens a lot of times in cases of rape or sexual abuse. Right. But I'm just pointing out some of the differences here. Like, this is on tape. You've got the marriage certificate. You have all of this evidence. And they also got him on racketeering charges, which are different than the Cosby charges, right? So there's just a whole host of differences with this. Who knows what happened? Maybe there's some, they call it fruit of the poisonous tree. Where you get evidence where you didn't have a valid warrant, or, if there's any mistake, everything else you got is then thrown out. We don't know if that'll happen down the line, but it doesn't appear that way, because there's just so many, he was paying people to get these sex tapes back, and there's evidence for that. So there's just so many crimes and so many different ways that they can skin this cat that I don't see it being the same thing as what happened with Cosby.
So the likelihood that justice will be served, and that obviously, maybe is a loose sort of term, but the likelihood that he will actually do some time is probably higher than the Cosby situation.
Yeah. I mean, because we're not just talking New York. We're talking, there's still the trial in Illinois. There's still the trial in Minnesota. There's just so much going on here that, the likelihood is high that he's going to serve a whole lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, before April
I'm just going to correct us really quickly and say,
go ahead.
Because of the age of these girls, okay? And y'all correct me too if I say it wrong, if I say the age of these women, right? Because
we've said it a few times. It's the age of these girls.
Right? Yeah,
it's the age of these girls.
These girls. We got to remember that. So just the way we use language, again, we got to.
It's important. You're right.
It really is.
You're absolutely right.
And this. You wanted to say something.
Well,
before.
I want to put up a comment before April asks this question. Okay. There's just a couple people saying some different things in the comments.
Yeah, they're really.
Dr. D is preaching tonight. Please tell me where her church is so I can transfer my membership. This one's big right here. Doctor in neuropsychology and attorney Fryson, can we please take a 5-second break to say black girl / women rock?
Yes.
just 5 seconds.
Yes.
Since we were talking a second ago about how black women are so respected,
appreciated.
Underappreciated,
valued,
noticed, valued, all of that. We want to take a moment to say that tonight our choice of two extraordinary black women is not lost on us. So thank you for coming on and being a part of this.
Exactly.
Our chimes are celebrating you too.
Definitely. So I watched, I really went down a rabbit hole with
Yeah,
R.
you did.
Kelly.
Yeah.
I did.
A while ago.
I watched the documentary, and then I was just going in, researching, and just reading everything and watching everything. So on some YouTube channel, I don't even know whose it was, but I guess this was his brother. Said it was his brother, was interviewed, and his brother was talking about how their older sister abused them sexually. And that the mom, she worked late in the night, and that the sister was basically raising them. And that she would take R. Kelly, and the things that these girls said that he did to them, his sister did to him.
That's what the brother said.
That's what the brother said. And the brother said she did more to him than she did to the brother that was talking, that was being interviewed. And so my question is to you, Dee, when you hear about these stories about people who have been sexually abused as a child, and then they grow up and they end up doing the same thing, maybe even worse than what happened to them, what is it that makes someone repeat something that happened to them that was so negative, that they hated? I mean, the brother spoke about R. Kelly just really, crying and begging her not to do what she did. He would hide and hope that she wouldn't come home and all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying, why would you go and do the exact same thing, worse actually, than what happened to you when you knew how it did, and you knew how it did your emotions, your emotional side or your psyche? What makes a person do that?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say, and I want to acknowledge this very clearly and very openly, so that especially because I think that a lot of survivors of sexual abuse live with the fear that they might someday do something that was so heinous that happened to them, because here goes this normal seeming person that was celebrated by everyone and seemed to have such a good side, and yet they were doing this heinous thing behind other people's backs. There was a gentleman at a conference that I went to who actually spoke about that. And he said him and his wife never had children because he was so afraid that he might do something to harm his own children. And so look at what sexual abuse did. It took away an entire generation from this man and from his lineage, right? And I want to say very loud and clear that there is no more likelihood that you will sexually abuse because you have a sexual abuse history.
Okay.
That is very clear in the research that we have. It is not more likely that you will sexually abuse. However, amongst those who have sexually abused, there is a higher amount of people who have a sexual abuse history. But just because you have a sexual abuse history does not
Doesn't
mean
automatically
you're any
mean-
more
And
likely to
that
go forward
is
in sexually
a good thing.
That's helpful.
That is helpful because
So
a lot
how-
of
Yeah,
people
and I
have
want you
been
to be aware
through.
of that.
Yes.
So, but how do we? Because I've heard, I'm listening to those stats and the way you're putting them. It almost feels like somebody could use the second stat that you gave to prove the thing that we think is a stereotype, which is, all these sexual abusers. The reason why they're like that is because they were abused themselves.
Right. No. There's not a correlation. There's no correlation between the fact that you were sexually abused and that person going on to become abuser. That means that most people who are sexually abused do not go on to sexually abuse others, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the most important part to keep in mind. And we have lots of research that shows that. There's a site called Darkness to Light. It's d2l.org. They have all of the stats on that. So if anyone ever wants to look up that information, I'm a trained facilitator with them, and they have a lot of information free. It is out there, free, that they have made available.
Is that D and the number 2 and the letter L?
D, the number 2 and the letter L.
D2L.org, and that's darkness to light.
D2L.org. Yeah, darkness to light. They have a
Can
program
one of the
for
chimes put that?
children,
One of the
and all
chimes put that in the comments
information.
so that somebody else can get to that if they need to.
Yes,
if you want to.
D2.
D2L.org.
Yeah, the letter D, the number 2, the letter L.org. They have lots of stats and information that's available for free out there. And now, what was your question initially? I just wanted to make sure that.
Yes.
The
The question, really, the question we were getting at was that it seemed like he was doing something that he hated being done to him. What would cause him to want to do that?
Why would he want to do something that he
and
hated?
maybe the word "want" is not a good word. Why would he end up doing it?
And maybe he didn't want it.
Yeah.
Maybe it was.
We don't want to know
just
specifically his mind. Just
right,
kind
but
of.
just in general, you know.
Yeah, and I can't tell you necessarily the mind of someone who abuses. However, I can tell you that it makes a lot of sense that you might want to take control in a situation where you did not have control previously. I can tell you that it makes a lot of sense. And now that doesn't
Okay.
mean that people are going to go forward and take control over others and harm others, but quite often that's why you might see somebody, and that's why we got to be careful the things that we say about people and their actions when we don't know what's behind their actions, right?
Yeah.
But and oftentimes, what will people say about this fast tail girl or this girl? Oh, she's being a hoe, or oh, she's being fast, right? And meanwhile, this person perhaps is just taking control over their sexuality in a way that it was controlled previously, and now they're taking control over their sexuality. And rather than looking at this person, and rather than talking to this person, rather than investing in this person, now we've done called this person a hoe. We done called this person, and we called them all sorts of different names, right? As opposed to recognizing what might be going on, and might they be. And this is another thing. And I know the Christians, they go like when I say this, but the reality
Say
is,
it.
you know what Sarah Jakes Roberts said? She said, "There's always a place of comfort in the world. The church might not offer it, but there's always a place of comfort in the world." And what does she mean by that? I'm talking about the fact that sometimes people are seeking their own liberation, and rather than try to help them find a healthy way to be liberated, we pile on there some shame. We pile on there some wet finger wagging, and oh, you shouldn't be doing this. What do? We put people out of the church. We tell them, oh, you're not allowed to serve with a big old belly, right?
Wow.
Rather than looking to see what is going on with this individual, right? And then another point I want to make just really quickly is that, when Homeboy was saying he needs to transfer his membership, we ought to be talking about these things from the pulpit. We
Yes.
have to talk about these things from a
Yes.
place of
I
power.
agree.
And there is always
Yeah.
a position of power
Yes.
in the pulpit. There's a power of the pulpit over the pew, right? We have to talk about these things from the pulpit. It is embarrassing the number of churches that I go to and speak at, and there are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s that come up to me afterwards and say they've never heard the word sexual abuse from the pulpit. They have never heard the word
Wow.
abortion. They've never heard someone talk about their rape, never heard it
Oh,
talked
my
about. And they've been in
goodness.
the church for 60, 70 years. It's an embarrassment, and it's an indictment on our church. And the way we create safety for others is allowing that language to come from the
Yes.
pulpit,
That's right.
allowing space for stories that are real stories. You think we don't have pastors that have been raped? You think we don't have pastors that have had abortions? You think we don't
Right.
have pastors that have been sexually abused? We have to make space for those stories. It's really
Yes,
important.
Part
yes.
of making space for the stories, though, is holding the people in power within the church accountable
it.
for what they've done.
Yes.
And we don't do that. And until we start to hold them accountable, we can't start talking about it because we just can't, because there's so
Right.
much of it going on and being hidden.
Yes.
So in addition to talking about it, we have to hold the people in power that are actually doing these and perpetuating these things accountable for what they're doing.
I agree.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we're wrapping up now. We only got a couple more questions that we want to ask you. I wanted to go back to something that we were talking about a little bit earlier, Nicole, because April and I were looking at some of this stuff, and we didn't know what something meant. There's a thing called the Mann Act, MANN Act, some kind of federal law against, I guess, sex trafficking, but we don't know exactly what that is.
Yeah. Can you explain that, please? Yes.
Yeah, what
I'm
is
so
the
glad
Mann
you
Act?
brought that up, babe.
I'm
Yes.
assuming this is something that's supposed to help mitigate against sex trafficking. I'm assuming it has something to do with this case. But anyway, what is
It is, but it's a whole other discussion in how it was born. If you really want to know about it, you can go down a rabbit hole, like it was saying before. Google it. It was
Okay.
also called the White Slave Act, right? Which is a whole other discussion because it was
boy.
passed in 1810, and this is when everybody was going crazy, about white women with black men. If you read about the boxer Joe Johnson that got in trouble for having the white girlfriend, they used the Mann Act against him. So the definition, what it says in the law, and it's very vague, it criminalizes the transportation of any woman or girl for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery, or for any other immoral purpose. So that whole
Okay.
any other immoral purpose was used against people back then. Now, it's not all bad, but when you put that much vague language into a statute and you call it the White Slave Act, like that's what they called it as it was passed in Congress. It goes back to the thing that we were saying about not valuing black women. And I know they used it against him here in this case, but the whole purpose of it was, protecting white women because they're so fragile. Like, and that's just America and white women and the protection and their white tears. And, I could go on and on about that. That's what I'm saying. It's a whole nother conversation. But the Mann Act is against sex trafficking, but it was born out of the protection of white women.
Wow.
Wow, wow.
We didn't even know that when we asked you that.
No.
We could have done a whole show on that.
Exactly. That is a whole show on its own. You are so right.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Okay, so...
Can I just say that really brings up, and I'm just going to say this really quickly, it brings up a very difficult position that those of us who are against the current prison industrial complex, right? Those of us who are against the current, it really puts us in a tough position, because it's like, okay, yeah, we don't like prison, but that is the institution that R. Kelly belongs in, right?
Yes.
That is because that's the institution that we have available for him right now, right? And so it puts a lot of us in a tough position, because okay, yeah, we want to abolish some of these laws that we know are being used against Black people, and we know are going to be used to pigeonhole Black people into one little position, but at the same time, what other options do we have, especially when you wait decades and decades to bring justice, right? You see what happens when we wait so long to bring justice to a situation?
So you're talking now, Dee, you're talking about a person who might have feelings against mass incarceration and maybe might have some issues with some of the tactics and things that were used in order to put R. Kelly behind bars. That's what you're saying.
And not just to put him behind bars, just Black people, period,
Black
right?
people
So
in
that's
general,
understandable. But the reality is he's committing crimes. What do we do with the people who are harming other people? We have to do something with those individuals, right?
So,
and if we wait so long, then prison is the right institution for this individual.
So can we talk about that for a second? We started by talking about cancel culture. Can we just ask this question now? How do we, and to both of you, how do we as people of color who want to make sure that the prison system and the justice system is something that advantages us just like it does other people, that it would be something where we're innocent until proven guilty, like normal people would be? How are we true to that? And at the same time, I guess what I'm really asking is, I don't know how to put this question. In a situation like this one, where we're tempted to say, because R. Kelly is a Black man, that we should probably support his being freed because the justice system is used against him. Well, how does a Black person deal with that? How do we stay where we're actually fighting for the justice system to do the right things, and at the same time saying, you know what, this guy deserves to be in prison? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, you're looking at, for me, it's looking at the crime, I'll say, right? Like they talk about crimes against people. So we look at the weed charges, right? And the drug charges, and how all of the laws were written for Black people, if we're honest. Because you look at the difference between crack. Crack is whack, like Whitney has said. It was cocaine. The difference between crack and cocaine, it's the same thing. Just one is more expensive than the other. So you're looking at the crimes. Are they against people? Am I harming people? Crimes where you're harming yourself, where they're criminalized Black behavior. You look at the impact, like the disparate impact that the law has on people. And we can look and see the numbers, the percentages of Black people in jail and what they are in jail for. So like white collar criminals, they don't go to jail. They barely hardly go to jail. Martha Stewart did all of that, the stuff with the securities fraud. I couldn't get it out.
Yes.
Securities fraud. She did all of that, and she was in this highfalutin prison, barely served any time. So that's okay because it's money. But I'm harming my body, and instead of giving me treatment, you put me in jail. Like, it's just, you're looking at the crimes that are committed, whether they're against people. My thing, and this is not, infringing on other people's enjoyments, their right to enjoy their lives, right? So what R. Kelly did was an infringement on other people's rights to peacefully enjoy their lives. Some of these other crimes that they're writing against Black people, like even the Mann Act that we talked about and how they were criminalizing Black men with white women, there's nothing that they're not doing. That's not a crime. There's not anything that they're doing. And so you have to look at the crime, look at the law, And they say there may not be intent. Like, I mean, I'm getting down a rabbit hole. They talk about the voter ID laws and the intents there, but the disparate impact, that's the thing that you're looking at. The impact, what is it targeting? What behavior is it targeting? And is there another way that you could actually reform the behavior that it's been targeting?
So we should not feel like we're being in any way traitors to our race if we are pro R. Kelly in prison.
Not a traitor at all.
Okay, that's what I'm really asking. Right. D, what were you gonna say?
No, I was holding up my.
She's broke. Yeah, somebody said throw out the weed charges and make sexual abuse charges tougher.
Exactly. Right.
I mean, really. So, wow. It's time to end, babe. I mean, we could go longer. You guys are great.
You guys are amazing.
And we have learned so much, but we want you to give us one last good nugget before you go. So for D, what advice would you give? And we're not saying victims.
A person who has experienced sexual abuse.
Yes, a person who has experienced sexual abuse. I have to do better with that. What would you say? Can they be healed from this? Is this something that they can actually be healed and be able to go on with life afterwards?
Yes. Yeah. And so I just want to be very honest about this word healed. Perhaps we should say healing. Yes, I believe in full, complete healing, right? But the reality is there are some wounds that we experience that we might be healing from for the rest of our lives, or it might have some scars that we have for the rest of our lives. I have a scar on my leg right now from when I was cut. I was, I think, 15 years old. And oh my goodness, that was 26 years ago. And if I press on the left side of the scar, feels just like the rest of my leg. If I feel on the right side of the scar, feels just like the rest of my leg. If I press on the scar, here 25 years later, I can still feel a little bit of pain there.
Wow.
Is it healed? Yeah, it's healed. Am I still probably healing to some degree? Because that's just what our bodies are constantly doing till the day that we die? Absolutely. But if something presses up on it, I might still have a reaction, right?
Wow.
And that is the way that it is quite often with trauma. Is there healing for trauma? Absolutely. Am I saying that you're going to have a gaping wound forever? Absolutely not. But are there some things that might happen in life that, like this R. Kelly trial? I never watched the Surviving R. Kelly thing. Why? Because I don't want nobody pressing up against my wounds. I don't need to watch anything else. That we already saw the man peeing on people, decades ago.
Right.
Why do I need to watch anything else, right?
Exactly.
And so I have to protect the areas of my life that are a little more sensitive. And I might have to do that for the rest of my life on this part of my leg, where I'm just not going to press on it, which I'm doing right now as I'm talking about it. For some reason, it's causing pain, right? So that, I just want to say that, yes, there is healing. Healing is possible. If you have been victimized by someone else, first of all, you are believed, you are valued, you are treasured, you are loved. You do not have to blame yourself. You are not to blame at all. I want to say that it is an adult's job to keep children safe from sexual abuse.
Yes.
Somebody in a group that I was in earlier was like, are y'all talking to your kids about sex trafficking? And I was like, absolutely not. My husband and I don't hush topics around our children. So we will talk about it. And if they have questions, and when they have questions, we answer it. But I'm not teaching them explicitly about sex trafficking, because it's my job to make sure there are policies in place. It is my job to make sure that if I'm dropping them at somebody's house, that I've talked to the adults and found out who's going to be watching the children. Are y'all all planning on sleeping? No, well, my children aren't sleeping over, so that all the children can get together and do things that are inappropriate, because children don't have frontal lobes yet. Absolutely not, right? It's my job. It is my job as an adult to keep my children safe from sexual abuse. Child-on-child sexual abuse is the number one fastest growing type of sexual abuse. We have to keep a watch to make sure that these things are not happening. And so those are the things that I would say. Oh, and I did want to also say, the person who stated that multiple generations of Chicago women, she said every Black girl I knew who grew up there had an R. Kelly story, every single one. Her name is Britt Julius, and she is a music critic for the Chicago Tribune. So just wanted to give that notification for who said that.
Wow.
That is crazy, man. My goodness. Any parting words for us, Nicole?
Do the crime, do the time.
I love it.
We agree.
Yes, we agree.
We agree. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
you guys are
much,
amazing.
You guys
did an excellent job tonight.
Awesome. I mean, everybody saying that's a whole word. Speak on it. You guys are.
Vote for Nicole and D. I don't know what he's voting for you for, but maybe you should be.
At the end, babe.
Oh, that's
the end.
it. Oh,
But I'm
about,
gonna say who they need to vote for at the end. Just hold
Okay,
on.
okay. I thought he meant
All
for
right.
like president or something. I didn't know.
Very
That could
nice
be.
to have been
That
on
could
here. I just want to say, Nicole, I'm probably going to connect with you later. I went to school with your sisters, I believe. Amber was in my husband's class, and Elise was in my class.
Yeah.
So
Oh
very nice
wow!
to
I
meet
didn't
you.
realize that.
I didn't know you were in Elise's
I
class,
didn't
D.
either.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's behind you, right, April?
A year behind me.
Right. So April's in your
Just
class right
one.
above
Just
you.
1 year.
I cannot
Just
believe
1 year,
that
D.
April is older than me. Please, I need to do this vegan thing. Lord have mercy, please.
Look, don't say older. Just 1 year. Okay. We're the same age. We're the same age. I'm your age.
Thank you, ladies.
All right,
You guys added to the show today. It was
Beautiful
amazing.
women,
I think you
inside
helped
and
us
out.
to get some real perspective on
Yes.
this issue. And that's what we're here for. We want to really make sure that when things like this happen, that we're able to understand how we should be thinking about them.
Yes.
And sometimes we're still developing our opinions about what's going on.
And sometimes we don't know how to think about it.
That's true.
So I think you guys really helped people tonight.
You gave us some good
And
language too. You
did.
gave us some ideas on how we should think about this law stuff, and then you gave us some language on how we should talk about people that go through
Been
things like
through.
this.
Yes.
Not labeling them, but saying
Right.
this is a person who has experienced this particular thing. So
Yes.
all of that
One
was
last
helpful
thing,
tonight.
not talk
Yes.
about, but listen. That's the main thing that we can do. Listen to people. If we would just bite our
Yes.
tongues and be quiet, that provides so much safe space for people. If we would just be quiet and not have something to say.
Wow.
And the most therapeutic moments of my life happened when I was invited to share some of the worst things that happened to me, and it was met with silence. And that was exactly what was needed. You don't have the words to match somebody's trauma.
Yeah.
Just be quiet.
Yeah. Because we're always trying to fix people.
We are all the
Yeah.
time.
Sometimes we need to just listen. You're right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you, ladies.
We'll see you
Thank
guys
you.
next
We
time.
love you guys.
Whenever that is.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
All right, y'all. Well, I enjoyed that thoroughly.
That was
amazing.
really good.
I'm gonna tell you right now.
That was really good.
I learned a bunch of stuff tonight, and I
did
learned
too.
things that I didn't think I was going to learn about. We had questions beforehand, and I thought,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to learn something about this, and we did. But there was stuff that we learned tonight that I wasn't.
And I think I need to look back on I need to look now at what I need to be canceling. I don't think I take that seriously enough. I need to be canceling some stuff.
Right. The
I
reality is,
I cancel Walmart, but I cancel Walmart because
You don't
I
like
can't
Walmart.
stand Walmart.
Right. But you're right.
know.
The reality is that there are some things that we don't realize there's a connection between us supporting that stuff financially, and sometimes it's financing the thing that we're against.
Yes.
And when that's actually happening,
you
we
don't
should
even think about
consider.
that. We do.
I'm not supporting that. And if
Yes.
enough of us don't support it, that person has to think twice about doing that thing.
That's so true.
Because we're not supporting it.
So true.
We have
So
power
true.
doing that. There's no question. So
Yeah.
I do think that Nicole made a good point. Cancel culture sometimes gets a bad rap, and that automatically we're able to make people feel bad about certain things.
Well, I think because sometimes it's done in a malicious way in certain instances.
Or sometimes it's done sort of haphazardly,
That's what
where
I'm
it's
saying.
like
Sometimes
we don't even
sometimes
know
just
all,
out of-
we don't even know all the
right.
story yet, and we just
Sometimes
cancel
it's just
somebody.
I don't like you.
Right,
But
right,
anyway, that's
right.
another topic.
It is a different
and
topic.
I love you too, Amber.
But the point is, they did a great job tonight. And so, what do
Yes.
you want to say to the people about who
Well,
we
I
voted
was
for
just
tonight?
gonna say that you should vote for the black women, and I'm the black woman
Oh, my
that's sitting
goodness.
right here. So go on and Team April. Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
you can do team
April
D
because I am
or
a
Team
black
Nicole.
woman, and I'm the only black woman now that's sitting here. So I represent the two amazing black women that were just on the show. So go ahead and just do Team
That's
April.
fine. That's fine. I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't
No,
mind
seriously,
losing. No
guys.
big deal.
Seriously. Team Nicole, Team D. And if you liked this live tonight,
You need to
just
share it.
thumbs up, heart,
It's still-
share.
you can still share it now,
You can
that's true.
still share. Thank you,
Yeah.
Courtney. Thank
Yeah.
you, Madeline.
Yeah, hit the thumbs
Yes.
up like a bunch of times. Hit the like, hit the love, whatever, all
Yes,
that stuff.
because this
And
was
then share it.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm just so happy that we did this.
Look at
Look at all the
Candace.
Team April.
Look at Candace
Look
talking
at all
about
the
Team
team.
April. You know what I'm saying?
I love y'all. That's because
Team Black Women.
that's right. Team Black Women.
Team
So
April.
instead of Team Black Women, you just say Team April, and that's what that means for the night.
That's the only way April can win, man.
I didn't win tonight, but Nicole and D is why
Team April,
you know.
Nicole, and D.
Thanks, sissy.
That is fine. I do not
All right,
mind
John.
at all. I do not mind
know you
losing to
don't,
my
babe. I know
beautiful
you
wife.
don't.
You know what I'm saying? Guys,
All
we'll be
right, guys.
back again on Friday, of course.
Good
with our
topic on
podcast
Friday, so
episode.
you need
Yes.
to come on and join
Look
us.
at
there.
O'Brien to my team, John. I meant April.
Exactly.
John
Thank you,
Stephen
O'Brien.
Nixon, don't give in. Fight for your votes. Nah, man, not tonight. You know what I'm
My
saying? I'm
Primo
not fighting
always
tonight.
got to be fighting for John.
I need
Team
Primo.
Nicole,
you know what I'm
D,
saying?
April, yes, awesome. We love you guys.
Yeah, so
Chimes, y'all are the best.
So we'll see you on Friday on YouTube, where our podcast episode will be dropped at 3:00. By the way, thank you for supporting our 100th episode. We're so happy that we reached that. If you watched it already, thank you. Thank you for the comments that you've already done. If you haven't seen it yet, go back and watch. We get some good reminiscing going on in that, and you can share it with people and say, hey, celebrate our friends John and April. They just hit 100 episodes. It's funny. I didn't know this.
This
But
is for Madeline,
our boy
right?
Lance J told us that most people quit before
Yes.
their 20th episode
Yes.
of a podcast. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So for us to get 100 is kind of a big deal. The Lord really has blessed us. So
Yes.
thank you for your support, and we're going to keep on trying to do it. So
Primo
hopefully-
said that brown background. No, I don't even understand that.
Yeah, the brown background's
Y'all, if
pretty
you
bad.
have not seen the 100th episode, go and
Yeah,
watch, and you
go
will see
watch the
how
100th. Yes,
horrible.
Yes. Go to
You
Just
know,
John
the
and April
content
right
was
now.
still good, but the background was pretty bad. Anyway,
I think the content was good.
it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
For the background. This is for Madeline.
We'll see y'all. We'll
All
see y'all
right,
next week.
y'all.
We'll be back next week too. Wednesday, same time, same channel.
Love y'all.